Good afternoon. It is Monday, December 5th, 4 p.m. I'd like to welcome everybody to our Ottawa City Commission study session. Do we have any public comments today?
None registered.
Thank you. All right, item one of our discussion will be our electric utility rates with Director Landis and Director Clark. Good afternoon.
I'm not in attendance, I'm still at something.
That's right.
Okay, thank you so much. This is the first of our conversations regarding the electric utility. And so it's the first time that we've talked about this particular utility. We've spent several weeks talking about water and wastewater utilities so far. So some of the slides will be organized the same, but there's a lot more information in this first presentation just to try and present to you similar types of information for each of the utilities. So bear with me as we go through these. Next slide, please. The last electric rate increase was effective in 2021. I believe when we approved it, it was supposed to take effect in 2020, but it didn't actually go into place until the beginning of 2021. We have increasing expenditures, but a lot of volatility in our demand power and purchase power line items. And those are some types of expenditures that we don't have any control over. And so we're trying to forecast for the future makes this very difficult. So when we're also looking at the increased expenditures for just line construction and some of the other things that we don't have control over, increasing cost of transformers and meters and all of those things that we have to have in order to run this electric utility, it does cause our fund balances to start to decline over time. And then we have the added capital improvements that we see needing to happen in the future that also causes some concern. So as a reminder, the electric utility is an enterprise fund, and so the only revenue that we can generate is essentially from user fees. So there's no property taxes, no sales taxes that come into this fund. And the impact to the customer is difficult also to show you in this fund because every customer's habits change in the use of electricity depending on a variety of things every month. So a lot of times in our water utility, we typically see consistent usage amongst our users from month to month, and then, you know, with maybe changes in the winter months or summer months. And then our wastewater utility is relatively flat usage because of the way that we calculate it. But electric is a lot more difficult because everyone's usage changes every single month. In this fund, we have 5,000 on average, 5,370 residential customers, 650 small business, and 118, this is large business, but actually it's large power users. And that's a little bit different because it's all based on the amount of power that you're using, not necessarily a quantifiable size of the business itself. We do have some what you might consider smaller businesses, but they are large power users. So this slide has a lot of small type on it, and I apologize for that. I don't expect you to read it, but I did put it there because in our resolution, we have lots of different rate categories, and they're all outlined differently within our rate ordinance or resolution. And so everything is charged differently, and it's based on different levels within each one of those categories, also making it very difficult to give you an exact breakdown of what the, you know, where the revenue comes from in each one of those categories, what that usage might be, or what those average bills might be for any customer that lives within any one of those categories. Next slide, please. This shows you our current financial forecast, and I will start this by saying again, we would never let that cash balance run below zero, but it's only there is a demonstration that if we were to forecast out the current expenditures the way that they're trending and all of our future capital improvements that we're projecting need to take place, we would be getting into a position where our expenditures far outweigh our revenues increasingly over time, and our cash balance would dwindle very quickly. Our targeted fund balance, again, is 20% of our operating expenditures. And so that it places us around 3.5 million, 3.6 million in this fund, which is also much higher than the other utilities we've talked about, because we do have this just is a completely different type of utility. Next slide, please. This table here was asked for in one of our other utilities, and so we went ahead and provided it for this one as well. As you can see, our expenditure levels have stayed fairly consistent until this year. You do see a dip in our expenditures in 2018, 19, 20, and those were the years that we've talked about where, because of the impacts of the pandemic and we weren't certain exactly where everything was going to be headed, we did scale back on some of our expenditures and held off on a lot of those larger capital improvements, maybe held back on some of those meter replacement programs, things like that that we needed to do, just to ensure that we would have enough cash balance moving forward. As you can see, the trend line for the year ending cash balance follows. Next slide, please. These are some of the projects that we have planned for the electric utility. Some of them are already included in your 2023. The planning or design process for the system conversion is included in 2023. And then really a lot of your larger projects get started out in 25, 26, 27 and beyond. And so you don't really see those listed there, but many of them are listed down below here in the future capital projects. These are projects that we don't necessarily have either the year identified yet, or they live outside of that 5-year project planning model, or we don't have a good expenditure estimate at this time.
Director Tharp?
Yes.
Could you explain what the design and construct system conversion from the 2400 to 7200 is?
Our 2400 system is our older system. It lays mostly downtown and to the east and west of downtown and then north of the river. Converting that system to 7200 would not only improve reliability, but it would improve efficiency across the whole system at that point. And we have started the design to accomplish that. Some of the work that has been done so that people could see if they wanted to is from basically 7th Street to 1st Street on the west side of downtown, in the alley where the electric runs. It has all been converted to 7200 from 2400. And we've just got to continue that conversion. Now that 7200, some of that you can probably go back 80 years or more, that system's been hanging on those wires. And at some point in time, and we've already had some issues. We've got one circuit that literally shorted underground very close to the power plant that we have had to take completely out of play and put that over on other circuits in order to keep everybody in power. And so it's just, honestly, it's a matter of time until we have something else happen. And eventually we get to a point where we don't have anything else to put it on. So this conversion is something that we've got to continue to push forward with.
Well, I appreciate that explanation. I think if anybody's reading, the other stuff is pretty self-explanatory. That one, some folks just might not understand what's the need, especially when it's a multi-million-dollar project. What we're getting for the spending.
Yeah, we sat and talked about it today, actually, as we looked at a grant webinar, and like you said, it's a multi-million-dollar project. There can be some monies available, but nearly all of these grants, quite honestly, are match And so when you start talking a $12 million project and they ask for a 33% match, that's a big match. You know, any way we cut it. So a lot of ways we got to look at this, but we got to continue to push forward.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is also probably kind of difficult. Actually, I apologize, I used probably the wrong color font for those percentages within the ranges. But what you can see, I guess, your lowest usage, these are just for residential customers. Your lowest usage is in the blue. And then the next lowest usage is in the orange for residential customers. We do have some that fall in a little bit higher category, and you can tell that are the lowest percentages or the highest percentages that fall within the larger usage categories happens during the summer months. As you can tell, the usage typically goes up in the summer months, but a very, very small portion of our customers are in the very highest range each month overall for electrical usage. I don't know if this helps at all, but it does at least give you an idea of where some of our customers fall as far as usage goes. Residential only, of course. Next slide, please. Okay, so we presented to you in this packet 3 different options. The reality is that we can choose a lot of different variety of ways to slice and dice this and to put a package together for you. So the important part would be for you to give us some guidance and see where we want to go from here. This very first slide, I went with the question that we've had in the other utilities, which was, what does it take to get us to the point where revenue is exceeding expenditures? Because we talked about expenditures exceeding your revenue is what drives your fund balance down. So this is an option that we put in here just to show that in your total revenue at this option would keep your revenues above your expenditures for the time period of that 5 years that we're discussing. And that would be an increase to your base charge of $3 one time in the first year, and then an 18% increase in year 1 plus 2% in the remaining years. We realize that is a really large increase. It may not even be something we really want to discuss, but we wanted to show you the option that does put you in a position to have your revenues exceed your expenditures. Next slide, please. Option B and option C, quite frankly, are very similar in the outcome. We just did a little bit different take on each one. So the first one here is option B. It's a 6% annual rate increase across each year for 5 years. So that would be 6% every increase every single year. And in this slide, because as you remember at the beginning, I said everybody's usage changes every single month. It's too difficult to show you year over year what that might look like for an average customer each and every month. So we did it as an average across the 12 months for the different types of customers. And so that's the annual impact per customer down below. So what this does is that our revenue begins to trend upward in the first couple of years, and then it does exceed our expenditures beginning in year 3 and beyond. And then our targeted fund balance, we're not meeting it until year 3. We do see quite a dip in 2024. The reason for that is because we have placed a project expenditure in there for additional order of some transformers for the potential solar project. That may or may not occur, may or may not happen, or need to happen all at one time in 1 year. So I don't want to draw, I guess, concern from that dipping in that year. I believe that we can go back and find a way to be able to spread that cost over time should we need to. So that's not really a concern of mine. I know it does appear as though it should be, but it does still keep us above where we need to be in the out years.
To be sure I understand, so on year 1, residential 6,000, it shows 34.24. That would be the annual increase. In other words, about $3 more a month.
That is the increase over this year. Yes, the cost over this current year. Yep. Yes, so year 1 is $34 more than what they're currently paying on average in this current year in 2022. Yes, and then year two would be $36 more than that $34 and accelerating beyond that because it is a 6% each year on top of the previous year. So in the end, the total increase of all 5 years, more than what they're paying right now is $192
For the year.
for the 5 years.
Yeah,
for
but at
total
the end of
years.
5 years, it's $192 more for the year.
Per year.
No, not per year, in total.
Yeah.
Yes, in total for the 5 years.
Yeah, but in that fifth year, you're paying $193 more than
What you would
when
be
year
getting.
one started.
Yes,
Per year.
yes.
Right.
$17
Same thing.
roughly per month, more than your bill would be right
You're
now.
saying the same thing.
Yes.
Yes, we are saying the same thing, yes.
Saying the same thing.
Okay.
We're trying.
Same.
All talking the same language.
Yes.
True.
Okay, do you have questions on this one? I will, can you go back one slide, please? I'm gonna tell you on both of these options, our concern lies with not necessarily, the size of impact for some of the lower usage customers, although every customer is different in their ability to, pay any type of increase. But if you were to look at some of the large, like say the large business users or the large business, as you start getting into those categories, then we have some concerns there. That is how our current rate structure is set up. And remember that I said that for some large power users, it may actually include a smaller business. It's just about what type of power they're using. And so we do actually only have one company that lives in that 12 million kilowatt hour rate category right now. So we might have to look at how the overall rates are structured in general in those categories. And we've talked about that before. We had some concern from some of our smaller business customers that were in the large power category. And so that is something that we do still have to come back and visit with. And I think we're gonna have some outside consultant assistance with trying to look at how we might be able to restructure that differently so that we can impact those customers differently.
And it's not something we're thinking about. We are in the process of looking at these rate structures. We have solicited some help from KMEA. There will be some others that we may get involved in this idea. We believe that what we're looking here as far as electric utility rate structure is probably a bit antiquated. And there probably are some things that we can do different, better, however that may fall, and we are working on that.
So what's the end goal of a different rate structure? You still have to raise a certain amount of money to run the utility.
Absolutely, but at the same point in time, we want to make sure that we are not either under or overcharging any of our customers.
So,
And so I think as we look at the structure, we have got to make sure that we feel like that the class in which they fall is the class that they should fall in. Sometimes it's hard, for us to understand, because of the structure, how a business that, let's just say it's a convenience store, would fall into the same category as one of our industrial park users at that point in time. And so I think those are some of the things that we've got to look at, and maybe it's all right, but we certainly need to look at it and make sure that's true.
Now, the way that I structured this and the impact and the revenues is all based on the way that it sits today. So any type of rate increase that we put in place would be based on the rate categories and the customers that live in those categories now. And so we would, again, at some future point, want to come back and revisit that rate structure and how those rates might look at some future time.
And will any of these options, is it helping to offset the ECA? Or will the ECA percentage, 'cause I'm sure people have that question when you have the two lines on the bill. As these rates go up, will that make that ECA potentially be lower because we don't have to offset?
Great question. It's a great question. I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't put it in the slides. So the ECA and the way it's calculated, the intent for how it's calculated is to offset the amount of rate that you haven't captured, or the amount of expense that you haven't captured in your rate structure. So we have a group between our two departments that are working together right now to come back and determine how to calculate that ECA, and if there's a way to do it differently than we currently are. And I think that they've made some progress. I don't know exactly, but the idea would be, yes, you'll see some changes to how that is calculated in the future months, and that any type of rate increase should help offset what that ECA might.
I think the simple answer is yes. Anything that we do that captures more of our expenditures in our rates is going to reduce. It may not do away with the ECA. We have some control through our products, but we do not have full control over what the market prices are doing back and forth. And so we've got to capture those. And that's what the ECA does.
Next slide, please. Like I said, this is a little bit different. It essentially does about the same thing. It does generate less revenue. So this is just increasing the base charge every year by $1 and then doing a 5% increase, annual rate increase year over year for 5 years. I think what you can tell from this is that the base charge, again, just like in every other utility we have, because of the number of customers, does not generate as much as a percentage rate increase does. So you can see that in year 3, I think we were at over 3 million in our ending balance on the other option, 3.2, and in this one we're at 2 million. So a 1% increase year over year for 5 years generates just under 1.2 million less in revenue. So that it is structured very similarly, but it does generate less revenue over time.
So it's $1 per year increase.
$1 each year increase for our base charge.
So the next year would be
And
$2.
then- No, just, oh, yes. It's $1 increase on top of the previous year, so yes.
Okay.
And I believe that we're at
1550, I believe.
1550, is it? Okay, so each year. Mhm.
What just surprises me from option B to option C, we got 5% increase and $1 annually, which would be, pennies per month, I'm looking months. But I guess the $40 for the residential, I'm looking year 1, is more than the other plan. I think it'd be backwards, I don't know. I don't know the numbers, but $40.53 and $34.24 and 6%.
Sorry, let me take a look here. Sorry, I don't have those calculations with me. I will go back and double check those numbers, okay? Yeah, because it is $1 per month. It's $1 per month, not $1 per year. So it's $1 per month based
On top of the 5%.
on, and then the 5%, so that does generate the difference.
It just, that it's $1 annual base charge, and I guess it's.
So it's $15.50 per month, so in year 1 it would be $16.50 per month. So that's $12 more, plus, but a lower percentage rate increase, so that would generate.
Word it up there, I guess I think it's $1 per month.
Annually.
Yeah, that's how I would think I would say that at the top there, $1 per month annually. Base charge increase.
Thank you, we will change that.
And that might, then I would agree with those numbers, I guess, in that case, it probably would make a difference. I mean, well,
Yeah. Yeah, so $1 per month, annual increase, it generates about $75,000. And if 5% generates, about 690,000, I believe. I can get some more detailed numbers for you for the next meeting if that's helpful. Okay, so just one more slide to share with you, and then we can back up to these options if you want to discuss further. This one is, that's really difficult to read, I'm sorry. The KMEA released a rate comparison for all of the companies in Kansas. And so we just selected some of the more local companies or electric utilities, near us, with the comparison here. So I apologize for you not being able to read them on the screen. Hopefully you can read it in the packet easier. But where we fall out right now, and I did not put in here the options because I didn't know where our discussion would go, but as of right now, we're kind of second in line as far as expenditures go, but based on the lowest residential type of bill. So there's, again, the comparison could be in every rate category amongst every type of, level of usage. And so we didn't provide all of the different information. In fact, we can distribute that full comparison to you if you'd like.
And that all-in rate is basically the total paid divided by kilowatt hours used.
Yeah,
With
yes,
the
I
base
believe
charge
so.
built in.
Yeah, but it's a very complex calculation. Yes. That, I think, like I've said with our other utilities, that isn't nearly as important in making a decision. And we all have acknowledged that, but sometimes it's nice to see how we fall out with some of the other utilities and see where we are, if we're even in the right ballpark on our rates. The very last slide I have for you is just our timeline, which a discussion today, a discussion again next Monday, and then after that, we would be bringing back to you the rate resolutions or ordinances for all of the utilities, and then considering something at a regular meeting in December. Do you want to work back to the options and maybe give us some feedback as to how you'd like to see some additional information come to you for next Monday's conversation?
Yeah, before we do that, I'm confused on something. Let's see, this is page of the 10-year cash balance history. Go to that page. Like it's been 10 years. And I see on the,
Can you go to slide 5?
okay, yeah, the on 2021, the ending cash balance is $5.4 million. So it looks like we're doing pretty good at that point. And then on the next slide, the next 2 slides, it's going to be 3, I guess. Sorry, it's be page 8, 9, and it shows in 2023.
An ending balance of
No, that would be-
$3.4 million.
Well, that would be if we did this option A. Just a minute, I thought I saw,
Can you go to the slide
maybe the one before that.
right before that?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the one to the page, what year, page 5 or 4? Thank you.
Slide 4, please.
2023, there we go. And I see in that one, 2023, if we do nothing, is that right, the ending balance would be 1.1 million.
Yes.
So quite a change from 5 million down to this $1.4 million difference there.
You're right. So let me give you an example of what we're seeing. The cost of our large dollar items has gone up significantly. So the cost of our transformers, of our meters, of the appurtenances, the forward placing meters, the inventory needed for line construction, all of those coupled with the demand power price. To give you an example, I want to say that we're about 1.5 or $2 million over what we budgeted just in demand power for the year. This year.
Purchase power.
In purchase power, purchase power expense. Yeah, we budgeted 5.5 million, we're expecting 7.8 million. So more than 2 million. So those are the kinds of impacts that we're seeing that these expenditures have had on this utility. So if you don't, and we haven't done a rate increase since 21. So for all of 22, we didn't do an additional rate increase, but our expenditures went up significantly. So those are the kinds of things that are driving driving it down. Now, there's probably some expenditures built in there that we don't have to do. For example, like those, the capital expenditures in '23, of course, we would take a look at those or we'll go back and do some work on this fund. But the reality is, without doing something, we're going to have some major issues in getting capital projects done, and then some of these large expenses that we don't have control over.
Go ahead.
Are all the capital budgets programmed to be cash?
No, they're not. Some of the smaller ones are, but when we get to years 26 and 27, we've talked about the actual conversion, that's 3.4 million, and I have it in there, I believe, over 10 years. Now, of course, any one of those projects we can do over 20 years, and we can stretch it out even more. There's some things we can do like that. But yeah, everything that's in there right now is either an individual cash purchase that it doesn't really meet the threshold for financing. It's not something you would typically finance, or it's in there as finance for at least 10 years.
And I would ask that we think back a little bit too. Some of the people sitting here, at least, we've been through this electric thing for a few years now. When we completed a round of increases, which were substantial, they were absolutely substantial. But if you remember, when we completed those rounds of increases, we were about 6% short of what we projected we needed at that point in time. And then we've gone a year plus without any increase, and that has had an impact. The other thing that I would say related to what we were just talking about is our business plan has kind of seemed to be that we do large projects and then we sit back and do nothing for 10 years. And so I think that we've got to start looking at being able to move forward as our city manager is suggesting, and financing these projects and getting more things done over a period of time, instead of doing a large project with a large capital outlay and feel like we can't do anything for a period of time.
Yeah, so purchase power seems to be the majority of that increase in our costs, is that right? And if that's the case, then all these municipalities we were looking at here are going to be seeing, because all of them, obviously, I'm guessing all of them purchase their power. I don't know if any of them self-generate, but I'm guessing they're all going to see increases all statewide. If purchase power is the most significant influence on cost.
When a lot of our purchase power was just quite honestly a missed estimate of what we would use over the year. And the estimate was just off. And so we did not budget enough. And so if we didn't budget enough, then that's what drives what we're looking at.
And then often with that difference, I guess, is unpredictable weather, I guess, right? Patterns or what?
Weather is the biggest driver for sure. You know, there's a lot of other impacts, and some of those are related to weather, but if the wind doesn't blow as much in any given year in Kansas right now, it has a pretty significant effect on the cost of power. Wind is one of our cheaper sources, and if the wind isn't blowing, then it's coming from someplace.
On that particular side that you were talking about electric rates, almost a good majority of those are in our EMP group. So they're going to be looking at increases too. We're not the only ones in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
Right? So I mean, almost all of those are in our power group.
I don't know
right
what they are.
Yeah.
You know, I have no idea where they're at and what they're doing exactly. You know, but I shouldn't say that. I do have some idea. And everybody is looking at increases. But I think the important thing is that everybody is experiencing the same increases in costs across the nation. It's not just Kansas, it's not just Ottawa, Kansas. It's across the nation that we're seeing these kinds of things happen. And everybody's impacted by it. We can't control that.
Do you have other questions or some feedback on what you'd like to see or some other options you'd like to see presented?
Well, I know you had mentioned that you were going to look into different ways to manage the large business price. So I was wondering on, kind of, I guess, based off of option C, and maybe it would not be super helpful, but maybe increasing the base charge to $2, if that would close the gap faster. I mean, I know it would somewhat, but I'm not sure how much. I like the 5% increase because that's easy, but, and it impacts the large business the lowest, of course, but.
It just, I guess, increasing it $1 more, so basically $2 per month per year, or year over year. I'm gonna guess that's probably around, let's just say like 375,000 might be what it might generate in addition to. So it doesn't totally close the gap, but you're right, it does get us a lot closer. No, over the 5 years, $1 increase generates 75,000 approximately
A year.
a year.
Do you remember how much our last increase was?
It was 9%.
How much?
9%.
What year was that? Remember, was that 18? Or
No, it was in 2021.
2021, yeah.
I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here, is just that we had an increase here with our wastewater, and I'm just concerned about, we're doing another rate increase here, and I see it, look at the numbers, I'm saying we need it, but realistically, I'm just.
You should be concerned, but here's the issue. If you could have Melanie break down everything in the budget to what the rate is that's required for everything we have control over, we'd probably be all right. But it's that portion of the budget, like purchase power, like transformers cost, that we have no control over and we still have to buy. And if you don't do a rate increase of some type, you get even further behind. And what that translates to is Dennis may have to make a decision. If we need 10 transformers and we only have the budget for 7. So that's where you're at, between the devil and the deep blue sea. Down in the Caribbean. It's not a pleasant position for you to be in, but what Dennis and Melanie have done is brought you the best look they can, both professionally and financially, about where the utilities are at. And if you remember, when we did that electric utility, we put it off and off and off. And those of you that were here for that discussion said, we're not going to do that again.
And I might just throw out to you that the idea of showing you these financials or that, remember, these are approximately what we can guess is gonna happen based off of what we know is happening today and what the history has been, just in expenditures and revenue alone. While we don't have to do any of the options that were presented, as long as we do something, we're moving in the right direction. And, we do have, you can see that the cash balance and the fund balance, those are not in, it's gonna take us a couple of years to get to a position where we absolutely have to do something. But if we were to do anything at all, it's very helpful to maintaining the balances that we have in there. And then also maybe looking at doing something over time. We could do some sort of an escalated increase over time to maybe offset what's happening in the other utilities. Or we could do a less than 5 years approach do something, come back with the new rate structure or the new rate categories, not rate structure, I'm sorry, the right rate categories, but I don't believe that that's something that's gonna happen immediately. And so those things, while they're in progress, I mean, I would say it's probably gonna take us a good year's worth of conversation to get those moving in the right direction, maybe not that long. But by holding off too long, you lose the ability to impact your revenues over time.
And you should not think that bringing back new categories are going to bring about less revenue, because what it really becomes is a redistribution of the charges, and you're trying to get to an equitable base among the ratepayers.
Yeah, that's right.
And fairness is in the eye of the beholder and the person who pays the bill.
I do think it's important, you already mentioned it in slide 2, but that this being an enterprise fund, people's property taxes aren't going towards this. This is strictly its own island. So I think that's important to remember too.
Yes.
Didn't we, one time, did we transfer money out of this fund for other operations of the city? I was thinking that we.
You do that, you budget money,
That's part of it.
to go into the general fund, and that's worth about 10, 13 property tax mills.
The purpose of those transfers is to offset the expenditures that are for the utility that live in the operations or the functions of the general fund and are being paid for by the general fund. In addition to that, we do transfer monies out for debt service, existing debt service. We do also support the risk management fund and the community services fund. Each of our utilities support and transfer dollars to each one of those.
When we went through this last discussion, Commissioner Skidmore, what my goal was to decrease that transfer from all the utilities into the general fund, but that's a lot easier said than done.
Well, and I hate for us to take a look at it like that too, because as we sit here at this table, you know, and I preach this all the time, you know, you can look at these as all separate funds, but at the end of the day, we're all in this together, you know, and we're just trying to do the best we can to make this organization work for the community. And so I think, you know, to begin separating out, I think is something that we want to try to guard against, quite honestly.
And I know I had some worries about just how it would impact some of our lower income families, especially with, you know, the different increases that we've been talking about. And I was kind of mentioning to a friend, and she reminded me that ECAN does have the program that helps lower income families pay a portion or all of their utility bills. And while I know that doesn't help everyone, it can help some of the people that this may impact quite strongly. So that makes me feel a little bit better, but Richard was right, it's not an easy spot to be in.
Well, and we even have programs internally that I think people should be aware of, you know, that we do what we can to help people get their bills paid. And we do expend a significant amount of money helping every year.
I certainly think that the rate category discussion we need to have, because there's a lot of, as you mentioned earlier, convenience stores out there that are paying the same as, you know, large business, and we certainly don't want to increase their costs to the point that they just can't conduct, you know, business anymore. If they are momentarily in a large business setting, quite frankly, I'm not excited about any one of these. I would be perfectly fine with just a base increase right now, and maybe next year have another discussion about these three or similar options next year instead. And I think, if I remember right, we did a 25% increase over 3 years, and it went 10.96, if I believe.
We didn't get the 6.
We
We
didn't
never
get the
did the
6?
6. We did 10 and 9. It ended at 19, and we never did the 6% increase.
Okay.
There's the gap, And then we've gone a year without any increase at all. Thus, what happens to our balance?
And that's why I like this, having a 5-year plan. I like this. They have that.
I like the 5-year plan for sure. I just don't know if I'm ready to commit to any one of these plans without the rate structure increase, or rate structure conversation first. Rate category conversation.
When you say a base increase, are you talking about just the base charge or a lower?
Just
um,
Just a
Smaller
one-time percentage increase to get us into next year. And then we have a long-term, maybe 5-year discussion at that point, when we can categorize some of those folks in different categories. Because quite frankly, if you have a convenience store that goes into large business, and they're in large business for a significant amount of time, I mean, it's a significant increase in if they're there or if they're in small business. I mean, it's $500 a year, in just year one. It's $3,500 a year in 5 years. So I certainly want them to feel comfortable with, hey, I'm gonna be staying in small business because I won't be going into that large business kilowatt that they use, and there's a $2,800 difference in 5 years.
Well, when you get to the point where you're talking about your rates, whether it's any utility or not, you have to spend some time with staff talking about what your goals are for redoing those rate structures. What's your end goal? It's not just to raise revenues, which it is, but it's also to try and find some equity. And then you have to discuss, how do you find equity? And you're going to spend a lot of time talking philosophy as you develop new rate structures, because there was a reason why these were developed. We just don't have any written hieroglyphics. Do we?
No, we don't necessarily. And the other thing I would say to your concern, Commissioner, is that we are in that process. And so whatever we decide here today, whether it be a 5-year plan or a 1-year plan, is not going to change the fact that we are in that process. And whether you adapt one of these 5-year plans or whether you adapt a 1-year plan, we're going to continue down that road.
And the good part about all this is there are no unique ones out there. They're basically all the same. If you look across the United States, all the rate structures, and there is a plethora of information out there that staff can pull upon and see how other communities are doing it.
I think that having the 5-year plan in place, or at least knowing what our expenditures are that are coming to us in the future, knowing how to move and plan for some of those projects is really important to Director Tharp and his staff. Most of our large projects come a couple of years down the road, with the exception of one, I think, is slated in 2024, and the design right now that we're already in place for the system conversion project. But a lot of those do come down the road. So while we can be planning ahead for those, if we were to just do a 1 or 2 or less than 5-year rate increase, I don't know that that's going to impact that. Knowing where we're going to be financially in 5 years is really important to us. I think, your city manager makes a really good point when he says that the need for the revenue generation doesn't stop just because we do a category change, but the impact to those businesses within those categories does change. So it is just trying to balance it all for those that are impacted by it, and that's what that does for you by shortening the approval time for those increases. So.
And one other thing that I would throw out there is, and everybody listens to it all the time these days, and it's true. There's significant money out there in grants and those kinds of things that we are looking at on a daily basis. One of the things that they look at very, very hard is our ability to meet that match piece. And so by having a 5-year plan in place where we show that we're being proactive in staying ahead of our fund balances, is going to be pretty critical to us as we look at some of these dollars.
So here's a little bit of history for you. My first job, almost 43 years ago, EPA was giving out a lot of money, federal money, for wastewater treatment plants because we weren't doing a good job about not polluting our streams. And the hook with that was that you had to submit not only your new rate structure to the EPA, but you had to make a commitment to a 5-year rate structure and then go back and justify to them why you were charging or not charging what you needed to do. And EPA's, and this was back in the days, believe it or not, of far less paperwork. You get an EPA grant for about that. And the purpose of that was to get those communities to think, especially those without the capacity to work through all this, to get those communities to think, well, now they have the money. How are they going to meet the operations cost? How are they going to meet the debt cost going down the road? And EPA was started by a Republican president.
So the one other thing that we always talk about with you, and that we think is extremely important for every utility is that we do commit to a small incremental increase of some sort year over year to accommodate for those expenditure increases that are happening outside of our control. And so regardless of the increase that we might associate with some of those larger capital projects that are coming down the road, something that is, able to help cover some of those increased costs over time would be extremely helpful in just continuing to move us in the right direction. As opposed to doing nothing, which would really put us in a worse position in the next couple of years to try and make up that ground.
So I know we had mentioned on one of the other ones that we had reviewed that maybe we should review it more often than we have been, every few years. So just to try to find a middle ground, if we selected maybe an option or gave you direction for an option that we liked, and then had plans to review it again next year after the categories have been studied, or, we're in December, so next year is not that far away, but is that an option? Is that something that we could do? I know it doesn't give you a lot of stability there, I guess, but if it kind of gave some sort of direction.
Yeah, I think that what you have to remember is when you come back and you do, in this case, it's a rate resolution, is that there's typically a time period in the resolution. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of committing to the period of time in which those rates are going to be in place. So again, maybe that's something where you commit to some sort of small to moderate increase year over year to help accommodate or offset the expenditure increases over time. And then we come back and discuss what is needed on top of that next year, and then you can have that additional, and we can go back and change it again. Or we can do something where you're literally only adopting it for 1 year. Really, that's your choice, how you want to approach.
Where we have fallen down, and we probably falls on me, is when we did that electric rate increase, the intent was to sit down every year with the commission and take a look at it and follow it. Not just simply look at the financials and see where. So I think that you have an opportunity when you do these, that everybody steps up, elected and appointed, and calendars out. Here's the meeting, we're going to talk about this. Here's what we're going to look at. We just want to see if we're meeting the expectations that we had when the rate increase was made.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we adopt one of these, let's look at it a year from now and say, okay, how close were we to the projections? Were we in line? Do we need to make another adjustment? I don't know, but that might be good to look at it annually. And I'm talking all the utilities, not just electric.
Absolutely. And I would suggest September, once we finish budget.
Yeah, don't ruin the holidays.
You know, let's sit down, you know, the first 3 weeks in September, the last 2 weeks in September, and let's take a look, you know. And I agree 100% with the fact that it's gotta be on the calendar. We've just gotta commit to the fact that we've gotta get it done.
Do you know that 6% that we didn't do, was that probably due to COVID? Or
That was due to the lack of want for a discussion about it, quite honestly. At that point in time, I believe we had significant increases. And I absolutely think that was viable. You know, we did 19% over 2 years. We had to. We simply had to. And I think there was a feeling among the commission, yeah, quite honestly, among all of us, you know, that going back at that point in time and hitting again for another 6 or 7% or whatever that was, just wasn't warranted. You know, it just didn't feel like we could do it. Well, we're here again, you know, talking about we need to do this every year on an inflationary basis. And so while we can commit to 1 year, we need to be committing to 20 years. You know, that we're gonna look at this and we're gonna see inflationary increases happen within our organization, not so that we're beating our community up. That's not why we're here. None of us are here for that. But so we're keeping our utilities, our whole organization healthy.
I like personally option C or some variety of it. I know it bridges that gap, but it doesn't, it's not an excessive amount, not that I think anything. But, and it has really close to the same impact for citizens as option B would. A little less on some of the larger businesses and things, so that's my thought on it.
I'm assuming all these percent increases on the rate structure basically affect every year, first 2,000 kilowatt hours, 5% over 2,000, so it's basically just, it's everything.
Yes, we would just apply it to each one of the rates.
I was just trying to think, you know, kind of like Commissioner Graves mentioned about people who are paying at the lowest end, you know, on the bell curve of our utility usage. Those low standard deviations are being affected at the same as, you know, someone on the upper end. And I don't know the work that would go into looking at, you know, the residential over 2,000 kilowatt hours, looking at the percentage use. Sure, to me, it's putting the burden, a little more burden on fewer people, but it's putting it on people who are using the most power. So I was curious, and if this rate structure, I mean, maybe follows kind of from your expertise, other ones, but if, you know, even on residential, if it's first 2,000 is, you know, whatever percentage, say we do a 5, do we increase over 2,000 to essentially capture more from people, you know, those top end users, the top, you know, those 2 standard deviations out?
There's usually some reasons for the larger users, whether that be in a residential class, a commercial class, or an industrial class. And I think the one thing that we got to be very careful of here is those people. The reason that a lot of those people are bigger users is because they're employing someone. It may be 2 or 3 people, it may be 100 people, but they're employing someone. And so I don't think it behooves us, honestly, to think about putting more burden on those people that are the employers of our community than anyone else in the community.
I was strictly speaking residential, because is that graph
That
strictly
graph is just
residential?
residential.
Okay.
I mean, that's, yeah, along those lines, because looking at that structure for the businesses, there's a little increase for residential, and I don't know what impact that would have, or if in your perspective that is even worth looking at, but in my mind, that puts more of that burden on those people who are already paying a lot or using a lot, instead of people who are probably struggling or I would assume more practical about their energy usage if they're
I'm
struggling.
kind of the same way. You gotta think about the environment that we live in. A lot of those people that are the higher users are people that are working from home. They're self-employed, they're working from home, you know, they're using that because they may be employing people within their house at that point in time. And the same thing kind of falls in place at that point. That is a very small percentage. Those higher users are a very small percentage. So I'm not sure that we could impact that by just affecting those people.
It also could be those living in older homes that don't have good insulation
Could be
and
part of it too.
that causes the higher usage, which there are programs out there for weatherization that are being, pushed really hard through the state. But getting those things in the hands of people and then, seeing the effect of that down the road, it really does take some time.
Well, if I were to choose one of these plans, I think option B would be more so what I would go with. I think that's your 5-year commitment that you're asking for. 6% is kind of what I was thinking, that our last increase was. It gets us closer to our ending balance that you're trying to achieve. My only concern, as Director Tharp was saying, is for the high-end users, especially that large business. In 5 years, that's a significant increase on them per month. I don't know what we can do about that. That's certainly a discussion I'd like to have, if you guys have any ideas. Because I certainly don't want to, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 large businesses, I don't want to drive them to the point that it's not monetarily beneficial for them to stay around and employ those, 10 or 20 or 100 employees that they do.
It was our concern as well when we put these tables together, is that really stands out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a quandary, these are for-profit businesses. Everybody that we're talking about, they have the opportunity to go someplace, and most of them probably look on a pretty regular basis to see what the comparison is. That table that we showed, albeit as, kind of ambiguous as it is, does show that our rates are pretty much below everybody at this point in time. That again, as Director Landis, suggested, we can't just look at that. We've got to look at what keeps this community, what keeps our utility healthy for this community. And while that can be a consideration, it can't be the biggest consideration.
People flip the switch and they expect their electricity, the lights to come on, and 99.9% of the time it does, unless there's some outage. And there's a price to be paid for that consistency. I know the countries in the world where that's not the case, and they don't pay much for their power, but they have rolling blackouts every day, and they don't know what to expect. So I guess with that privilege comes a cost, and we have to face it right on. And I don't know, I'm kind of looking at both options C and B, and I don't know if it's a combination of the two somehow. But I am looking at that, what the mayor said about that first year, at $42,600. That's quite a chunk of change for a small business, a large business.
We will bring this back another week. It is something that you can ponder.
Yeah, are there other things that
Marching
you would like to
orders, yeah, I
see?
think. What are we looking? We
Yes.
need marching orders.
We're happy to prepare whatever you'd like to see.
But it appears as though the consensus is option A is not an option.
Yeah,
So
Say
let
that's the
me-
one,
let
for
me-
sure.
Just throw that out there. I'm gonna take that slide and ditch
I can
it.
take that out of there, okay,
I'm gonna ditch that
perfect.
slide.
And I look at the option C, year 2024, it brings us down to 400,000, and that's getting close to the spring at the bottom. Is that a concern of either of you, if you get down to 400,000 for ending balance?
Tell me, I'm sorry, on option C?
It absolutely is a concern. Actually, in B and C both, we see kind of the second year there that is a concern, but I gotta tell you, Commissioner, we've made so many things work that I don't have that big a concern, no.
And it does include a specific expense for transformers related to a future project. And so there is the potential to split that over time or, decide how we might be able to finance, short-term finance, either at least purchase that expense, do something in order to kind of soften the blow. We did just throw it in there as an actual cash expenditure for that one item, so.
So Director Tharp, have you looked at purchasing any transformers recently?
Absolutely.
How far out are they?
Everything's pretty much 8 months to a year. And just depending on size, that has a lot of effect these days. And honestly, we're gonna see a point here where I believe we haven't hit bottom, so to speak. I think we're gonna see them farther out than that. And I think we could very possibly see times, I don't think we will, but I think people will. We've already had people come to us wanting to borrow. And we can't borrow, we can't loan,
Capacity to do that.
we just simply don't have that capacity.
And these transformers that we're discussing are the transformers that will be installed for businesses that may possibly go into Proximity Park?
It could, well,
Or anything
yeah, I'm
else
not
that
gonna
may-
say that. That is a larger transformer, but it could be.
Sure.
It could be.
Or another business that might be
It
built here.
could be a
in-
subdivision in town. It could be another small commercial business. It runs a gamut.
So in the construction industry, time is our enemy. We certainly don't, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, we want to put a building in at Proximity Park, and we say, we don't have any transformers for 8 to 10 months, that might be a deterrent for them.
Absolutely can be. Now, I would keep in mind, Commissioner, that if we get in that position, most everybody else in the nation is probably gonna be in that position also, but nonetheless.
Or I think what you're hearing is that we have some sort of a combination of maybe BC. And I don't want to speak for all the other commissioners. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing. If anybody else would like to certainly give the directors a little bit of input, that'd be wonderful. But something in there, I think, is what we're leaning towards.
Yeah.
Certainly not A, as Commissioner Kaylee pointed out.
And I also think in the end, obviously, A is just very confusing. I think trying to explain to people, it's just a lot of numbers. Where, some of these other ones where it's the base charge and a flat % for years is a lot easier for, I think, people to understand than 18, I think I'd be remiss too to not plan something like this for 5 years and then be in the same boat in 3 years. I'd love to come back in 5 years and be sitting here and say, hey, we actually don't need to do this increase. I'd rather have the option of going back.
Absolutely.
Not that we would, but have that option in place, then, come again in 3 years and be looking at a larger increase to try and catch up.
That is the perfect position for us to be sitting here in front of you and say, we planned an increase, but we don't really feel like we have to do it. I'm sorry, I've never done that. I've never been able to sit at this table and do that.
There's one other item, in fact, when you were talking about that, it reminded me. So we do currently have a surcharge on the bill that was part of recapturing the loan and the GRDA expense from the 2021 weather event. And so that does come off somewhere, I believe it's April of this next year, right around the April timeframe. So it might run into the first part of May, but that is another thing to, I guess, toss out to you.
You
Or
have
questions
to
you might
take
get.
it off, commissioners. You promised it would come off.
And that was by resolution that we did that in order to recapture that amount. So we're tracking how much has been recaptured, and we estimated about 4.5 months that's left to recapture of that. And those payments are done now with the December payment, so we just haven't recaptured all of it yet. We're getting there though.
And you said that will be April.
Right around the April timeframe.
Just wondering, could we wait until April to enact this? And so it would stay more of a level type of charge to the people? Would that put us too far behind?
I don't know if the 2 months is going to make that big of a difference. Of course, it makes a difference, but you really could recommend any time frame that you want it to be implemented. We know that it won't be January because it is December that we're having the conversation, but I would suggest that the earliest we would put anything in place for any utility would be February, so that we at least have time to give notice, but any time after that is an option.
All right,
Okay, so we'll bring back the same or very similar options, maybe do a little bit of digging into some of the numbers for next Monday, and we can have as short or as long of a conversation about it as you like next Monday.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carr.
Yeah.
Director Landis, I know you had a discussion with us, or want to have a discussion with us about a couple other budget amendments.
That was a signal mistake.
That was my mistake. Thank you. So this was not on your agenda, and I apologize for that. As we were really getting into the deep details of all of the expenditure line items and forecasting in the electric fund, we started to get a little anxious about our budgeted authority for the electric fund. And when I brought to you the other budget amendments, I did not include the electric fund. And at that time, we were kind of basing it off of September, October expenditures. And I really, I think I shortcutted us on where we were actually going to land. So the budget amendment itself is for the electric fund only. This would be outside of the budget amendment hearing that you already have scheduled for this Wednesday. Those were for the other funds that we've discussed before. Now, this would be asking you for the ability to hold a public hearing to amend the budget for 2022 only for the electric fund only. And we do have an opportunity that if we were to send this into the newspaper tomorrow, that it could be published this Saturday. It does take 10 days. You do need to give 10 days notice for a public hearing. So that would put it on the 21st. The idea here being that because of those expenditures for purchase power, all of those things that we just discussed, and then the additional expenses for replacement of transformers that were used for new businesses. We did have revenue come in to offset some of those costs, but the budget authority itself, that revenue doesn't go into the expenditure line itself. So it does roll into your fund balance for next year, but it doesn't actually help you in the bottom line budget authority. So we really are proposing this just to make sure that we don't have a budget violation. We did also have the expenditures this year, which was about $750,000, if not a little bit more, for the GRDA and the low interest loan costs that weren't initially budgeted for this year. So these aren't just normal operating expenditures that have really pushed us over that budget authority that we had in place, but it's really those unanticipated things that happen along the way. Do you have questions about this, concerns about wanting to do an amendment for this fund? Again, my concern is just that if it's not going to be over, it's going to be extremely close. I just didn't want to put us in a position of having a budget violation. We've just been doing so long on our.
We need you to get it published.
We would send it tomorrow if you would just give a head nod. But if you want to not do that, we can. The only way that you could actually hold the public hearing on the 21st would be to have it published in Saturday's newspaper.
This makes sense, Commissioner.
Commissioners, can we give Director Landis the nod to go ahead and publish this budget amendment for the electric fund?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, comments by our city manager.
As Dennis is making his way back up here, I just want to remind you that the 26th of December and January 2nd, you will not have meetings because those are the Christmas and New Year's holidays for the city. And y'all might be somewhere. Okay. So, Director Tharp is going to give you an update on the Cedar Street project and talk to you in concept about an MOU on an opportunity we were notified, a grant opportunity we were notified, called a National Fitness Grant.
So, thank you for having me back.
We've missed you.
Cedar Street is coming along.
Like any relatively large project for us anyway, like that, there's been some hiccups back and forth. I have to say that the hiccups have been dealt with very well, and the project continues to move forward. If we can stay out of any bad weather, I would expect that in the next week and a half to 2 weeks that we will see that project finished completely. 13th Street, I believe, will open back up. That intersection will open back up tomorrow. I think is the plan at this point in time. 14th Street is ready for concrete. That intersection is ready for concrete. I went by today and they have that pretty much ready to pour concrete in there. And then they are tearing 15th Street out, probably as we speak, unless it's already dark. And you will see that 15th Street at this point in time is right around 15th Street and Cedar is down to one lane. They even have barricades up at Mulberry trying to detour traffic kind of around that area. So significant progress is being made, and we are going to get there. I think they've worked well with the residents in that area, and so I think everything is going as smoothly as we could have hoped for, really, at this point in time.
Dennis, anything you want to say about the other sidewalk project?
That's where I was going next. Thank you.
Good.
We have been doing some sidewalk work. As you all know, we did some sidewalk work on Tremont. We've done some sidewalk work on Willow. And we figured out today that some of our current sidewalk work on Willow, in the 700 block, has hit a couple of snags. We've had some residents that were a little bit distraught with our contractor, maybe not communicated with as well as could have been, and I think there was a series of events that have caused some issues for the residents themselves, quite honestly, and we are dealing with those. The one having the most issue I talked with today, and I will continue to figure out a way to help them get through that issue. We will see what we can figure out to get that done. And our contractor will hopefully continue to move forward. They have been somewhat slow in getting concrete in forms that were done. And most of that, I believe, was on the contractor. Maybe a piece of that, honestly, is getting concrete has been a little slow, period. So we will continue to monitor that situation, and we will make it come out as good as we can make it come out. That said, on to some other news that we have at this point in time. We have been working on a fitness court. I think you all maybe received a link today, maybe got a chance to look at the fitness court that we're doing. You did not get a link to it? Okay, you will get a link. You will get a link, and you will also see that at the commission meeting here at some point in time. Significant to this project is it's about 125,000, someplace in there, for the fitness court. Those are $22. When we started this conversation, we were talking about a 2023 project, and we're still talking about a 2023 project. But the 2023 cost of this fitness course is about $15,000 more than the 2022 cost of this fitness court. In the last week, we found out that there was what I believe happened. I don't know this for sure, but what I believe happened is a community backed out from doing a 2022 program. And so they came to us and said, would you be interested? Well, sure. We're going to save another $15,000 and really operate in the same time frame that we were talking about with the 2023 court. Yeah, that's almost a no-brainer.
And so the way this is set up is Blue Cross and Blue Shield funds these fitness courts. And we received a grant for $50,000. Originally, it would have been a little more. Again, this is a match. But with the program that we're talking about right now, our piece of that is a little over $92,000. And so through whatever processes we are going to need in order to accomplish this, we are going to need to come up with $92,000 in order to get this fitness court installed. We will be talking to them on Thursday about this MOU. And we will have more discussion. We've come up with a couple of questions that we need to ask yet, about exactly what this process looks like. And what happens to dollars if we get partway through this and, can't fund the rest, whatever might happen at that point in time. We've got some questions like that we need to ask. But as much as anything, we wanted to inform you that this is out there. It's good news. I mean, I think any of these grants that we get, I think are good news. This fitness court, I believe, is something that would be very adaptable in this community. This is somewhat like the old fitness court that sits at Kansas Park now.
Yeah.
Except this is a very new and upgraded version of that.
In fact, when you see this link and you see what they're talking about, the old type fitness courses, you'll kind of think, well, that's the one that's at Ottawa. And I think, if I remember right, you also see this on the link. There's several of these up in the metro area, and I think Baldwin City.
Garnett, actually.
Garnett.
Yeah. We actually made a trip down to Garnett to see the one there. Theirs sits by the train depot, just off the trail. And sits kind of back out of the way, but it's kind of unique. There is opportunity for sponsorships here. There is opportunity for them to advertise. It's got kind of a graffiti wall built into the whole fitness piece of this. And so there's a number of things that can happen to that end for sponsorships and that type of thing. And that is something that I think we will pursue aggressively. And I will probably be talking to some of you about that, quite honestly, as to what interest there might be in the community to sponsor something of this nature. So
Thinking that one at Kansas Park, Mike Ford put that in, I think it was 1994, it's how old it is. And some of the apparatus, whatever you want to call them, are somewhat antiquated. I don't know if people even use it anymore. They did it first.
Not as much, I don't think. It is antiquated a bit, and honestly, our plan, I believe, at this point in time, is going to be to put this fitness course right there.
It was an Eagle Scout project, and I think there's a plaque there, and we ought to keep that plaque there, kind of maybe expand the history of it.
Absolutely.
Well, and
Absolutely.
I know that some people may think of it as just another spot in the park or, something that they don't use. But I know when COVID had shut down the gym, that helped keep our sanity to be able to go there and to be able to work out on that equipment. And just for even any day, just for a different perspective or different, view than the normal looking out the gym window or something. It's nice to be able to go there, and it would be nice to have it updated, so.
Yeah, well, and our parks get so much use that it's so hard for everyone really to understand because we're not there all the time. But our parks get used significantly. There are a lot of people that not only use the trail, but use the trails within our parks, use the other amenities within our parks, not only for their kids, but for seniors who want to get out, like you said, just, want to get out of the house and be able to do something a little different. So I think this is a good opportunity. It's one we'll continue to pursue, and we'll be back to talk more about it as this moves forward.
Are we moving forward enough that we can share that link on our Facebook page? To at least give the public an idea of what we're talking about?
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem with sharing
I'll
that
share
at this
it with you
point.
all first.
Yeah, it'd be nice for us to see it.
Because thinking about, the one at Kansas Park, people are thinking about that, and oh man, it is antiquated. It is, where the newer one, it's, I mean, there's
It's different,
Yeah.
yeah. It is very different than.
a QR code that you can scan that'll help you do a workout, you know, so
Absolutely,
there's all sorts
absolutely.
of stuff to this one.
They're two different types of exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome, great news, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, comments by our city commissioners, Commissioner Graves,
I have no comment.
Commissioner Kaler,
None at this time.
Commissioner Clayton,
None at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore.
I'm just glad the KU and K-State both get to go bowling this year, so congratulations to my KU friends as well. Friend.
Thank
I have
you.
a picture of you wearing a KU shirt, just saying,
Are you?
though I do have one.
No, okay,
Okay, you know.
not sure which one.
I can't remember what it is.
Is it different even?
So, I have no comments.
We're just excited about it, that's all I have.
Go bowling.
I have a few announcements. December 7th, we have our Wednesday night meeting here at City Hall at 7 PM. Then December 12th, we have our study session here at 4 PM at City Hall. Any other things to come before the commission tonight? I'll adjourn.